By the way, I've met most Christians cannot convert Muslims. I've met 2 Christians who convert Muslims by the 1,000. You know what they do? They teach Muslims what is in the Sharia. They teach Muslims what is in the Quran. They teach Muslims what's in the Hadith. And once the Muslims find out what is actually in these documents, they go, oh, I don't think I like Islam as much as I used to. Then they preach to them the gospel of Jesus. So knowing Islam is a very powerful weapon, and it is the only weapon that we need. This is a war, but it does not need to be a war that involves bloodshed. This is a war of ideas. And let me say here, we have better ideas than Islam does. We have better constitutions than the Sharia. Now, because I say that, this is one of the reasons that I'm called a racist, hater, bigot, Islamophobe. People do not usually debate with me at all. What they just say is, oh, you're a racist, hater, bigot, Islamophobe. But I don't care what you call me. I don't, because it's simply not true, and I know who I am. I'm amazed at how many people can be driven down by just saying, I'll insult you or call you bad names if you say this. I mean, that's not the kind of person I am. So we do need to know the doctrine of Islam, because it explains to us everything that is going on, not only with Islam, but it also explains everything that's going on with non-Muslims, the Kafirs.
Yes, well, I will put all the details of your website where people can find do the study or look into it on your website, or in the comment section of the video as well.
Oh, by the way, let me explain to people where the little bitty books came from. I wrote, my first 3 books were just ordinary books. One of them 450 pages, the others were a couple hundred pages long. But I was down at the legislature here in Tennessee to get an anti-Sharia bill passed in the state legislature. Well, I began to realize as I met with more and more politicians that they simply were overwhelmed with stuff to read, and because bills coming up to be read. And so I said, well, wait a minute. I'm going to write a book on Sharia that is so small that it will not be discouraged, because people have been convinced that Islam is possible to understand. Yeah. So I wrote this little Sharia book, and as I recall, it's, I don't know, 60 or 70 pages, but and we're going to get to those in a moment. What happened is that the Sharia book sold so well, because it was a little bitty thin book. I said, well, wait a minute. I've got a 480-page Quran. I'm going to make me a little bitty 90-page Quran. I've got a 200-page Life of Muhammad, so I'm going to make a 70-page Life of Muhammad. My little bitty books outsell my big books 10 to 1. And I think it's because people have been told it's so hard to understand, but when they look at the little bitty book, they go, well, I could read this. And indeed, my little book, The Life of Muhammad, I gave to a 12-year-old student. Now, she was a good reader, but I gave it to her and I said, I'll pay you $20 to read this book. And so I gave her she read the book and she could understand it. So therefore, I met my criteria of writing in a simple manner so that anyone can understand it. But the little books give hope to people, I think is what it is. Like, well, I could read this. And I would have to ask you, don't you find that The Life of Muhammad is a fascinating story?
It absolutely is. It's fascinating for sure. Yeah, it is. It explains so much, but it gives so much insight on multiple levels, actually, what's going on in the world, but also in myself in a certain way. That's the psychological aspect, which I find fascinating also.
If all of our political readers had read The Life of Muhammad and the Hadith, we wouldn't be having a problem with Islam.
No, but I think in one of your books you talk about this the cause why people are just ignoring it or apologizing for it. It's like this abused, molested psyche in a certain way. It's very
yes.
weird. Especially now you have this feminist women who are apologizing for. Today I read some, because I get more attacks than ever by people, by the way, since I talk about Islam, which is interesting. I find that interesting. Why is that? Because I talked for a long time about Zionism and all these kinds of aspects. That's all fine. But if you talk about Islam, I'm a Zionist apologist. I am attacked by people. But today I saw a message from a woman who said, actually, we should I'm willing to convert to Islam to be loyal to them because of Islamophobia. A woman, you know, imagine this mindset. I mean, this comes from ignorance, of course, also partly, but there's another aspect that people just have this sort of suicidal mindset towards this, for them, quite troubling doctrine. But this goes back to the history, of course, of 1400 years, which maybe is in our system in some way, that we have this adapted this. I mean, we're lazy, of course. We here in the West, and we are stripped from the police force is stripped. It's feminized. It's we have forgotten how to stand up. We have forgotten how to die for a good cause. These kinds of things. And as you said before, you once, I don't know, you did an interview with somebody, and you said if you had a football game of Muslims against Kafirs, and you would have a microphone in the locker room before the game, you would hear in the Muslim locker room, you hear Allah Al Akbar, and this positive warrior mindset, and the other room was, what can we do? What do we have to do? I mean, that is, I could exactly find myself in that kind of theater, like in big now in society.
Well, it is very discouraging to me because the truth has been made simple, but people simply don't want to know the truth, because if you do know the truth and you speak up about it, they'll call you an Islamophobe. And when people call me an Islamophobe, I say to them this: well, phobia is a irrational fear. What is it that I have? What is this Islam that I have an irrational fear about? Can you tell me what is Islam? And so the person who calls you an Islamophobe, they can't even answer the question, what is Islam? So I put it back on them. Would you explain to me about this Islam that you say I'm phobic about? What is it? For instance, I understand that it includes wife beating. So if I'm opposed to wife beating, is that Islamophobia? Because wife beating is part of Islam. So those are the kind of arguments I use.
Yes, and of course, it's today people, they don't want to be confronted with their fears, let alone to go through their fears and understand their fears. That's why I think Islam is another perfect tool to understand your own fears and to come at peace with it, and to understand actually what's going on there. What is it actually? That's today's people want to avoid it. They want truth, but they don't want the whole truth about things. They don't want to pay the price. They don't want to pay the price.
Only a little truth. Tell me the nice part.
Yes.
Tell me the nice part.
Yeah. So if that's the case, where should we go from here then, Dr. Warren? What would you say? What would you advise people to do? Because for a lot of people, which I can understand, I mean, we're bathing in this violence, and people are tired, and we are political correct and all this thing. What would you advise people what they can do to get more?
Well, I'm going to tell you what I thought originally people needed to do. Then I'm going to tell you what I've learned that they must do instead. You have to, of course, acquaint yourself with the doctrine of Islam. You need to know, basically, just know who Muhammad is. You don't worry about Allah. Just know who Muhammad is. So once you know who Muhammad is, I used to think that you then need to go out and do something. Now then what I say is you need to find some other people to work with, because I've discovered that very few people will go out and oppose Islam on their own. So to do that, there's something we have in Europe called the Center for the Study of Political Islam. What happened was 6 years ago, a man called me up from Czech Republic and said, could we start a Center for the Study of Political Islam in Europe? I said, sure. Well, I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm, as a teacher, I always encourage people. Well, lo and behold, this man was exceedingly serious. And not only that, he turned out to be an organizational genius. So for 6 years now, he's put together a Center for the Study of Political Islam in Czech Republic, Austria, Slovakia, Hungary, Lithuania, and now we're starting on Bulgaria. So we decided that now then this system is working in Europe, we're going to bring it back to America. So we shipped it from America to Europe, developed it, now we're going to bring it back to America. This is going to happen in this upcoming year, because we need to find people with projects they can work on and people they can work with. And so that is the concept that we're going to be doing and bringing in the Center for the Study of Political Islam to America, to give you partners to work with, team players, and also projects that you can work on.
Yeah, good one. That's good. That's
Because
good.
we cannot wait. We cannot wait for the ministers to do it. We cannot wait on law enforcement. We cannot wait on the universities. We cannot wait on the churches. We have to do this ourselves. I mean, otherwise, it's the people. The reason you and I are talking this morning is that our civilization is broken. That is, the subject of Islam should be taken care of by clergy, law enforcement, military, and lawmakers. But they're not doing their job. Therefore, we have to go out and do the job they're doing for them. Now, let me give you some optimism here. We can win this war because we hold the better truth. Ours is a better civilization. So if we would only decide that we wanted to win, we would succeed. So the problem is really a morale problem, not some sort of funding problem or whatever else. We can win this war, but we have to have people to work with and projects to work on with.
So why would you?
Go ahead. Let me give you one more example, by the way. Here's an example of one man who was able to work on his own, and now then he's leading others. A man by the name of Steve Amundsen in California decided that he would take advantage of this peculiarity of a California law. Shopping malls have been declared a public place, and so therefore you can stand on the sidewalk and hand out brochures or talk to people about politics, that it is a free speech area. Every Friday, Steve goes out to the mall where many Muslims come, and he sets up a small table, folding table, and he'll hand out from 700 to 1,500 brochures explaining to people what Islam is and why Muslims do what they do. He's been doing this now for over a year. He has, by the way, he gets some Muslims who scream at him, but that's as far as it goes. But this is an example of one person who was able to do this. What we want to do is not to have you so that you have to do it on your own, but to put you together with a group of people who know Steve and how he makes this work, so that his knowledge can be passed on to others and we can have a group phenomena instead of just an individual's responsibility.
And again, it's fascinating. If I notice that when I talk about this and about the course and the things I learned, then people are very interested. They're like, wow, this is interesting about the life of Mohammed and the Hadith. And so it's not boring at all, actually.
Oh, it's very unboring.
Yeah.
It's some of the stuff, some of the stuff is actually incredible.
It is. It is.
It's like, what? You serious?
Yes. So why would you think that the history and the doctrine of Islam is completely occulted from today's, outcome-based education curriculums? Because you don't learn anything of Islam at school, as far as.
Well, in America, you learn some things about Islam, but unfortunately, they're all half true. In an American court of law, I've given testimony as an expert witness, and I was asked to declare that I would tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So therefore, half-truths are basically a lie. And that's one of the things we're dealing with is half-truths.
I don't recall, well, my school was not very successful, but I don't remember much about Islam at school.
How old are you, though? What's being taught today?
Excuse me?
What's being taught about Islam in the schools in the Netherlands today?
It's just another religion like that. I mean, the school system today is dumbing down factories.
Dumbing down factories.
Yeah, it's mind destruction camps in a certain way. I mean, what I learned with the self-study, the history of 1400 years, how successful that the whole Middle East was Christian or pagan, and they were completely annihilated. All these countries by starting from Mecca, and then when Muhammad went to Medina as an immigrant. That's very interesting also, how it spread out successfully and is ongoing. That made me understand also this mass immigration, especially by Muslims, seeing this from a different perspective if you know the life of Muhammad. Could you say a little bit about immigration and the life of Muhammad and jihad?
Well, the life of Muhammad, let's talk about his life. He had two periods. He preached the religion of Islam for 13 years in Mecca and converted about 150 people. So the religion of peace failed. Then we have the religion, he went to Medina where he became a politician and a jihadist. And through 95 acts of jihad in the last 9 years of his life, he became overwhelmingly successful. So that is the brief story of Muhammad's life. He was a failure as a preacher of the religion of peace, but he was a success as a jihadist and a politician. Now then, was he a preacher of the religion of peace? Yes, he was. So let's get that straight. That part is true, but it's also true that he killed people. So both things are true, which is this dualism idea. But one of the things we need to point out about Islam, you're talking about history, is there are post-Nazi societies, there are post-communist societies, there are post-Christian societies, but there are no post-Islamic societies. Now think about what I've told you.
Yes, we're in the midst of the ongoing process.
And once a nation becomes Islamic, the only thing that will make it un-Islamic we have in the Balkans, we have in Spain. In Spain, it took 700 years of war to drive Islam out. And now then, what do we see? Well, Muslims are now coming back to Spain, and the Spaniards don't seem to realize that, wait a minute, these people were here before, we fought for 700 years to drive them out. There seems to be this multicultural BS. So anyway, we want to defeat Islam, but we would like to do it with arguments and debate. I'm a Westerner. I'm not advocating any violence at all. And yet I've been accused of advocating violence. Actually, people say I do a lot of things, but they never can point out where I actually did it or said it, which is another way, of course, just insulting. Mm-hmm. But we must deal with Islam at the ideological level, because at the ideological level, it is permanent. But when you do it with a sword, they can come back. That is, humor and derision are far more powerful weapons against Islam than an atomic bomb. Yeah,
and humor is also getting censored, of course, in this political arena. It's ridiculous.
There are in the United States now, there are comedians who will not talk on a college campus. They say, they're going to stand up and start screaming at you in the middle of a joke. He says, I don't need that. So no, I've heard of more than one comedian in the United States who will not give a stand-up comedic act at a college, which is tragic. Look, one of the best things about being a human being is humor.
Yes. It is. It's true.
Yet humor is being taken away from us.
Yeah. It's.
Who is your oppressor? The man you can't tell a joke about.
No, we had here in France. There's a cabaretier. Was it in English? Don't know the word, but he got 2.5 years for, and he's he's not even, he has nice humor. It's funny, and he talked about Islam and Muslim. He's in jail for 2.5 years. He was quite a famous, what's the word? A funny guy. Comedian. But no, it's getting censored, and people are afraid to make jokes. They are afraid to laugh. They have in this arena. So for a lot of, again, a good Muslim, his moral obligation is to imitate the life of Muhammad. So when they immigrate to Europe, they put this in the context of the life of Muhammad, and they see this as part of jihad. Is that?
Yes.
Would you say that?
Going back to the Muhammad, he was successful after he migrated. So therefore, since his is the perfect life, and by the way, the Islamic calendar starts with his migration, which is odd if you think about it. You would think that the Islamic calendar would start with the birth of Muhammad or the date of the first revelation or something like that. But no, it happens when he migrated from Mecca to Medina. Why? Because that was what brought it success. So migration, which we see as an economic or political factor in a Muslim's life, is a form of jihad, not in harming people, but a form of jihad in that it puts a pressure against the kafir, the non-Muslim. So what we're seeing here, what we see as act of compassion, they see as a political act. So this is a whole different view. I mean, like I say, we see us as being generous, and they see us as giving them what is their due. That is, Allah gives this to them. We've just been holding it for them. Yeah. So therefore, we're going to see, as we see more and more migration, we'll see more and more people who want Sharia. We'll see more and more politicians who are elected on the Muslim platform. And this just keeps on increasing. Islam is like a ratchet. It goes forward, but it never goes back. Now, it may go forward and wait a long time before it does something again. But we need to understand that migration is a form of jihad. It's coming to Europe. It's coming to America. And we need to understand what is going on.
Exactly. Yeah, if you don't have a proper diagnosis, you cannot change the causal factors of anything. And
No. You can't cure the patient if you don't know what the disease is.
yeah, but then there is this critical thought process needed, and that's also not being taught anymore at these campuses or universities to a certain degree. I don't know, but
well, we have that here in America, where here's a university experience. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and there's a university here which is supposed to be an excellent university. I went to school there for my undergraduate, and so I was invited to give a talk at Vanderbilt. And so I thought, well, I'll give a technical talk. So I gave a talk that was entitled "A Statistical Analysis of Islamic Basic Text." Sounds very academic. And so I gave my talk, and when the talk was over, a man stood up in the back of the room and started screaming at me at the top of his voice, thrusting his finger at me, saying, "You're a fool, you're a bigot, you're a racist, you should never be allowed in any university." And then he started saying the same thing over and over again. That man was the head of the Middle East department. That was his method of argument, was to call me names and insult me. He did not say, in your analysis of the Quran, you say this and that is false. That is, he did not attack a single fact. He didn't even address my facts. He just said I should not be allowed on the campus, that I'm an immoral person. So this is the state of what is supposed to be a fine university. Well, it's not a fine university when you can't discuss ideas. So what we see is that universities in America are becoming ideological factories. They're not teaching you to reason. They're teaching you what the right answers are. And the right answers are, without any single exception, left of center.
Yes, it's sad.
This is a tragedy.
It is sad. It's very sad. One more question about because just to rehearse that. In Islam, you have religious Islam, you have peaceful Islam, you have violent Islam, and you have this is both part of the same thing. This dualism. How? Yes. Because when I spoke, I'm going to a mosque, by the way, to speak with Muslims in February when I go back to Holland, because I contacted some people and talked with some Muslims who lived in the area where I stayed in Holland. They go to the mosque 5 times a day, they preach 5 times a day, but they don't know anything actually. I told them about the course and I was talking about it and asking questions, and they were very interested actually in it. But I asked them about this dualism and about the approach to kafirs or kafirs in the hadith and in the how do they see that? And then all of them said, well, in the mosque we put them in another context. We don't refer them in that way. You know, these kinds of justification for it. But how does the doctrine deal with these contradictions and dualism in these scriptures, in the doctrine? Is that with the doctrine of abrogation?
Well, what they call abrogation, I call dualism, because abrogation is only applied to the Quran. But we see that we also have dualism not only in the Quran, but in the Hadith and the Sirah. So I've taken the concept of abrogation and sort of expanded it to make it fit the larger class. Okay.
So that's not, because the later part of Mohammed was the violent part, political part, and the warrior, the successful and the spreading of it. So, and the first part not. So the people, the peaceful, they want to refer to the peaceful and the religious part of Islam. But in the Quran, these are all later, not in the Quran. I mean, the Quran is made up in such a weird way, but the later verses are more applicable or more valid than the earlier verses. That's abrogation, is it?
Yes. Now, the earlier verses, which may be contradicted by the later verses, are still true, because if Allah says it, it is true. Because what the abrogation says, it is better or stronger. It doesn't say the earlier is false. This is something that people have difficulty sometimes in keeping up with.
Yeah, it's not weird. I mean, this is a fallacy. How can two things which are in opposition of each other, dualistic, be both true, in contradiction with each other?
Well, we see this is the way it works. The idea actually came to my mind in the study of quantum physics. You ask the question, is an electron matter or energy? And the answer is yes. It is matter if you look for it as in a material way, and it is energy if you look at it in an energetic way. So therefore, what is the true nature of the electron? Is it solid mass? Yes, it is. What is the true nature of the electron? Is it pure energy? Yes, it is. It is either and both of those. Yeah. So we see this also in physics as well.
It's very genius, I must say, also.
Well, dualism is the great strength of Islam. Yeah. They can always pass for what they want to be. But in the beginning, when they come to your country, they're like, oh, you have a wonderful country. We're so glad to be here. Now we can practice our religion. Then later you discover, well, we can practice our religion, but we need you to do this, and you need to do this. And so it starts expanding. But the expansion starts with the Hajj, the migration. And both sides of the equation are true.
Yeah, which makes it, therefore you need to know this context. It's impossible to take out just a thing and then talk about that. That's impossible. It doesn't go anywhere if you apply that.
The first thing that Islam tells you that is wrong is we're just like you. That is, they tell the Christians, oh, we worship Jesus. We honor Jesus too. To the Jews, they say, oh, we respect Moses, we respect Solomon, we respect David. And so the first thing that Muslims try to tell Christians and Jews is, we're just like you, only a little better.
Well, this sort of deception is a sort of way of deception, which is also allowed, but it's sort of this.
But see, they don't see it as deception. It is deception, but they're merely telling the truth they need to talk about. Does that make sense? That is, if they need the violent part, they have it. If they need the peaceful part, they have it. They have always what they want.
Yeah, that makes it very powerful.
I think one of the more discouraging, some of my unfavorite verses in the Quran are these. A Muslim is not the true friend of a non-believer. I find that very discouraging. And I find it discouraging that the book of Quran denigrates critical thought by saying we don't ask difficult questions. Now, a Muslim can be friendly. Let me be clear about that. But they're not actually your friend.
No, that's what I very much experienced with. I lived in Holland in areas with a lot of Muslim. You feel it's like having an interaction with somebody who holds grievances towards you.
Yes,
they're very friendly, but you feel that there are grievances towards me. It's not pleasant to be with in a certain way, but it's like that. They can be, but they can also be very friendly, of course. But
right, I tell people the difference between a friendly and a friend is this: if you go to a car salesman, you're going to find a very friendly man, but he is not actually your friend.
He gives you coffee.
He'll get you coffee.
Yes.
But he's not your friend.
Yeah. No. Well, it's important that we learn about this, and we take this as a gift to us, and to learn about it, because again, it's fascinating. Your work, the self-study, I would highly recommend people to go that. Where can people find you, Dr. Warner, and where can they find your work and the study?
Well, I have a website, politicalislam.com. I sell my books there. And then I have a YouTube channel, Political Islam. I've got nearly 200 videos that I've done over a period of time. I've been at this for a long time. I've been at this since 2001. So I've made a lot of videos, written a lot of books. This is what I do. As a matter of fact, this is all I do. I'm a 78-year-old man, totally devoted to dealing with the subject of Islam, because I see it as the great question of the 21st century. And if we don't answer the question correctly, we will not have our civilization anymore. This is very serious business. But if you think it's serious, go to my website, politicalislam.com, and enjoy my YouTube videos.
Yes, I would highly recommend that. It gave me a lot of understanding of Islam, about myself and the world. So thank you very much, Dr. Warner, for coming on. It was a great honor and a pleasure to have you on. I hope to see you again in the new year. And I wish you a beautiful month and a Christmas with loved ones, and all the best to you.
Well, thank you very much. And I want to appreciate you for having the intelligence to realize the importance of this question. And it's something that we need to talk about.
Yes.
So thank you so much for what you're doing. I really appreciate it.